Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Board of Trustees is now convened in a committee of the whole meeting on Thursday, February 7th, 2019 at 6 p.m. in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Instructional Support Center located at 10300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas, for the purpose of reviewing that portion of the Monday, February 11th, 2019 regular board meeting agenda, designated items, and to hear designated reports and recognitions posted in the meeting notice as required by Texas law. No action will be taken at this meeting. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Board of Trustees, we're here to set goals, listen to reports, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted as permitted by sections 551.071 through 551.084 of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on CFTV Channel 16 and CFTV online on the district website. They will also be rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 16 and available as video on demand on the website. For the tape to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and the cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. I would like to also take this opportunity to recognize the community leadership members who are here this evening, and they are Julie Heineman and Chuck Brandman. And would you all wave? Chuck, where's Chuck? Oh, there's Chuck. All right. The recognitions, board comments, and citizen participation portion of the agenda will be presented at the regular meeting on Monday, February 11th, 2019. At this time, we will proceed with the written reports portion of the agenda. And first up, item 4A, the administration will provide a written report on the 2019 summer school plans for elementary, middle, and high school. Ms. Jatlowski.
Dr. Ogletree, that is just questions only. It's our just regular information for the board about our summer school plans.
All right. Are there any questions? Tom? Bob? Okay.
Linda, if you would, for the viewing audience, briefly touch on the different programs that we have. These programs are very, very special, and many of them have received national awards. But if we don't at least touch on them, our viewing audience may not be aware of what is offered.
You are correct, Mr. Jackson. We do have various programs throughout the district for our students to help them be successful. Camp Summit is one that has received national recognition, the Magna Award. What else do we have? Algebra Camp is
Algebra
one
Camp.
that also supports us. And then, Mary, what else do we provide as far as regular summer school?
We have lots of original credit opportunities for our high school and middle school students. And we also have STEM camps, which are science, technology, engineering, and mathematics camps for our middle school students to get them excited about science and science careers. So those are really popular, and this is our third year for doing that. I think those are the ones you would want us to highlight.
And then we also have some required programs such as an ESL program that we're required to provide for our primary students, our students in the primary grades.
And of course, part of this is also part of the initiative of the superintendent from 6 or 7 years ago with focus on the middle. The superintendent and the board believe strongly that our elementaries do a fine job of building a foundation, but we have to bolster the middle because we know if we get the kids in 10th grade, they're going to graduate. But we need to enhance it. At JA Inspire, I mentioned to each of the 3 executives from Chevron Phillips part of this business strategy, because we do have a business strategy here, and it is successful. And JA Inspire was part of that strategy as we focus on the middle, but also
Correct.
because of your efforts, we have a significantly higher than average participation rate in algebra in 8th grade. And we also enjoy the anomaly that as numbers go up, as participation rates go up, test scores drop. Except in this district, participation rates go up and the test scores stay elevated. So those were some of the points, and yes, those were the programs that I wanted you to highlight briefly, so thank you.
All right, Bob.
Well, it's kind of piggyback onto what Tom was asking, because that was one of the things I definitely wanted to point out. But just curiously, I know this is the 5th year we've done Camp Summit? Isn't it the 5th year?
Is that correct, Barbara? This is our 6th year.
Yeah, the 6th year that we're starting. Just on some of the others, and I know the Camp Summit, it's around 2,500 students but it looks like we have increased the amount of schools and locations. Did we do that this year? Is there more or no?
We have the same number of schools. We always expect it's roughly about 24, 25 students.
Okay.
We invite more than that to come,
Right.
Mr. Covey, but of course, parents make the decision to send them or not. But we've got about the same number of schools. We try to to strategically place them throughout the district so the distance isn't that far from home.
Well, and I also noticed that we are offering, I'm sure, tutorials in the summer through summer school, and then the third administration of the STAR where needed. Just curiously, do you know, this is I didn't ask this early, but how many kids actually attend that? And it says that it's required. I know they have to take it, but.
That attend the Student Success Initiative summer
Right.
camp.
Right.
You'll have a number, Mary?
I'm sorry, Mary. If you'd sit on the front row, you wouldn't have that far to go.
We don't have exact numbers for you. We can bring them, but we can give you an approximate number. Mary, we can provide an approximate number for you.
I happen to know that it's about, at middle school, from 5 to 9, from 8th grade to 9th grade, it's about 300 math students and about 500 reading students. Elementary numbers, I'm not.
They're a little higher at elementary.
Yeah, they're a little higher at elementary, but I don't have those exact numbers. We can certainly have those for you on Monday.
Yeah, I would like to see that. I'd appreciate that.
Okay, no problem.
We can
Okay.
get that for
problem.
you for Monday.
Thank you. Mary, you can sit on the front row. I'm just kidding. It's just Tom and I. Y'all just go back there and whisper anyway, Mary. So,
Is that it, Bob?
yeah, I'm sorry.
All right, we'll go to 4B. The administration will provide a written report on the end-of-year academic performance and literacy assessment of elementary students in grades K through second and for the 2017-2018 school year. Any questions? Tom?
So the report that we have is very brief because it covers the entire district, but as I understand it, that is the legal requirement, right?
That is correct. Our requirement from the state is to provide with information how our students are performing district-wide.
However, the data itself is important, and I think everybody on the board knows this, but perhaps not everybody in the viewing audience might. So do you take the data, aggregate it by clusters, examine it? Do you review the data back with the principals? Do you do trend analysis on the data? Do you do cross comparisons within clusters?
Mr. Jackson, we're required to provide data to the state at the beginning of the year and then at the end of the year. The report that you have reflects the end of the year, which is a requirement that we have from the state. When we provide, and we're required to choose an assessment off the commissioner's list for a primary assessment, a reading readiness assessment. So when we do the beginning of year, that data is immediately provided to the campuses. We provide it in all different forms and look at the data. We talk about what needs to happen for the achievement for the students. We talk about everything from the achievement to that the mics work, the microphones work, that the earphones work. Everything is looked at as we're progressing towards the end of the year. But the data is very important because, as you know, primary literacy is the key. That it's essential for our kids to be successful. So we take this very seriously, and the campuses take this very seriously.
These look to be very good numbers. Is that a good appraisal?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you.
Just one quick question, Linda, and that is, in looking at the passing percentage, and I'm looking at 2017 and 2018, and we're looking at in kindergarten in 2017 we had a 91% pass, but when those kids go to first grade, it's an 88, so they have fallen. And what do we do about that whenever we've seen that decline?
Well, the assessment is different, obviously, as we go from kinder to first. There are different areas that are assessed, mostly in the phonics area, and the percentage points usually vary between 88 and 90. So, but again, we look at that data, we disaggregate it, and we talk to the campuses about when he's stepping with the students. We use iStation, the ICEP, as our universal screener, but then through ICEP, there are all these different lessons tied to the areas that the students are struggling with. So we make sure that those lessons are being used and kids are having the opportunity to improve their scores.
Well, you answered it better than I asked the question, because I knew that I felt like the tests were going to be more difficult as they go up. So thank you. Thanks for answering what I didn't ask, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Linda, and just to follow up on in second grade, should we be concerned about a 1 point difference from 17 to 2018?
Our second grade, Dr. Ogletree, has always been the grade level that we have really paid, I won't say paid the most attention to, but that we've really kept a closer eye on, because it is a grade level that typically has scored a little lower. But I will tell you that at one time they were quite a bit lower than this, and so we've made a lot of progress there. And that 1 percentage point fluctuates again from we're able to maintain the high 80s now with the second grade. But again, we continue to work with second grade because we want to get all of these in the 90s.
Would you share with our viewing audience why this report, why is this so important to a child's development and education?
Well, again, this is a reading readiness report. It is supposed to be indicating how our students are going to perform as they move on to third grade. And as you know, third grade is a marker where there's a lot of research that talks that when students are not successful in third grade reading, the literacy piece of it, that it is a lot more difficult for them as they continue through the grade. So this is an important important data to us to look at, to disaggregate, for the campuses to use as they make decisions for kids, because it is giving them indications about third grade and what needs to be done to make sure our kids are successful.
And yes, I just wanted to hear it from you, because what I've been told is that our prisons are built and planned based upon third grade scores, and so this is quite important that we get this done and get it done properly. Thank you. Do we on our agenda we have public comments? Has anyone signed up for any comments? All right, then we'll go to our consensus action items. 6A, the board will consider approving tax refunds of $500 or greater for Cyfair ISD. Any questions of Stewart? Okay, that can remain on consensus. The board will consider approving the minutes of the January 17, 2019 regular board meeting. Any questions? Okay, that will remain on consensus. We'll now review the non-consensus action items. 7A, the board will consider awarding bids and contracts and/or authorizing purchase orders as recommended in the posted agenda item. And they are audio-visual supplies, Canon inkjet press for print center, classroom materials and supplies, marching band trailers, marching band uniforms, school buses, and special equipment, education equipment and supplies. Any questions of Bill Powell or Mary Running? All right, Tom.
On the marching band trailers, my biggest question is, why did it take us so long? I was a band dad for 4 years ending 2000, and then a band dad again in 2004. Early on, we dads carried xylophones and other percussion equipment in our arms out to the field, and we thought it was a big deal when other dads would finally put wheels on the stand so they could be wheeled. I remember going to all these band marching contests, and all the rich kids seemed to have these trailers that carried all the equipment. And of course, all of our equipment went either in rented trucks and rented vans, in people's cars. So one, will this get the job done for us? And two, why did it take us so long?
Well, we certainly appreciate you and all the dads that did that for us over the years. But
I leave out that we also loaded these trucks.
And we're still going to rely on the dads to do that. But there's several parts to that question, or several answers, I guess you could say. But mainly it is cost. We looked at what it would cost to purchase the trailers. And we looked at, I just lost my train of thought, but sure, go ahead.
Mr. Jackson, for the last couple of years, Mary Running and her team have been collecting data. That's really what it is. We wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to be cost efficient with this, and we've been collecting data on the number of trucks that we've been renting, those that you've been loading, and And then we wanted to make sure that all of our schools had the opportunity to have the trailer, and that the trailers were the same. But that's really is a holdup, is that for the last couple of years they have been collecting the data on what we've been spending, what the costs are, and at what point we will start saving money. And really, we have figured out that is it 3 years, Mary?
4 years.
In 4 years, we will be saving almost $300,000.
To the M&O budget.
So what you're saying is, by the time my son graduated in 2000, we could have had these when my daughter started in 2001 and saved us parents a lot of grief.
I'm going to
If
blame
we-
Stuart Snow. That's my other.
If we had the funds
See,
available.
I was expecting Linda to say it was my fault, which
So I'm saying it now because.
probably is, but
But that really is what took us a little longer. As you know, we try to be very, very frugal with our funds, and so we wanted to make sure to do some comparison regarding what we're spending now and the cost savings.
but you recall that we went through several years of severe budget cuts.
Right.
And didn't have the funds to do that.
Only 20% budget cuts.
And we wanted to be equitable with all of our campuses, so. And we're using surplus bond funds for the purchase of these trailers.
The other part of the question unasked is briefly explain the contract. You know, I think reading through the board book, it makes sense, but you might explain it to the viewing public, because it's not quite the standard approach.
You're talking about the way the trailers are built
The way they're being acquired.
through bond funds?
No, you know, so we have the purchase, so we have the contract that we're assuming from Lamar Consolidated.
Correct. We're utilizing the same contract that other district, Lamar Consolidated, utilized to purchase their trailers. We're kind of piggybacking off of that contract.
And how are we able to utilize another school district's purchase contract?
We are.
Well, I was just going to say, I think what you might be asking is that part of the Interlocal Cooperative Act, one of the things that we're allowed to do as a government entity is to aggregate our buying power and enter into contracts with other public entities that we can then benefit with some of the contracts they've already negotiated.
And that means we can get a favorable price.
Correct.
By looking at the contract, but if we didn't like the price contained in that contract, we are not bound to use that contract, right?
Yes, sir. You are accurate.
And then talk a little bit about the band uniforms. These are really almost like a capital asset. What's the typical life for the band uniforms?
10-year rotation.
And Mary, I would tell you, after 5 years, those uniforms need to be replaced. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, can we move this to consensus? Yes. All right. 7B, the board will consider approving construction proposals and contracts from bond funds to the recommended contractors and authorize the superintendent or designee to execute all necessary documents related to such contracts as follows. Proposal 2018 Hamilton Middle School renovations, bond funds. 2, proposal 2018 Jersey Village High School renovation, bond funds. Any questions on these? Yes, Bob.
Just, and Roy, I guess this is for you, because the Jersey Village, we just renovated Jersey Village not too long ago, and so I was just wondering why we needed some already improvements and repairs. That's a question.
We
because I know
did the
we
major renovations and additions back in I think it was 2007, 2008. So, we're 10 years later. There's other parts and pieces of the building that do require some upgrades. And we had funds available or allocated in our 2014 bond program to cover those items that were not actually done as part of the 07 renovation.
I thought it was later than that. So is that far? Wow. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sorry I asked the question.
Oh, no problem.
Tom?
So for these two schools, did we have any flooding for these during Harvey? And do they require any addition, if so, do they require any remediation?
I'll go ahead and let Mr. Morgan, he's got that answer for you.
Neither campus flooded during the Harvey hurricane, and there's no remediation required. However, when we did the permitting for Jersey Village, it does lie within the 100-year floodplain. So the city did require us to elevate the press box concession stand about 5 feet.
You know, Jersey Village was the subject of subsidence, and that's the reason why the North and the West water authorities were partially created, was to deal with the subsidence in that area. Have we had any subsidence where the school is located itself?
We've had a little bit, and there is some building envelope work that we're going to do to correct some of the cracks and things like that. But, Mark, anything to add to that? Cosmetic. Just cosmetic? Good.
And if you would briefly talk about what's going to be done in the Hamilton renovation, because that's a fair-sized contract.
It is a fair-sized contract, and it's not too brief, but it's pretty much a complete renovation. They're getting the new kitchen. We're doing all mechanical replacement, new carpet, lighting fixtures throughout, paint, just complete renovation. We're adding to the bus drive and doing some work on the roadways. So just a complete renovation. We're doing the track, which will either occur this summer. We're kind of working with athletics to see if it's going to be this summer or next summer when we do the track.
So this ties in with the philosophy of this board of constantly trying to bring all schools up to the same standard.
Yes, sir.
As possible. Very good. Thank you.
All right, may we move that to consensus? Or
You know,
you want to
because,
keep that?
because of the size, let's
Keep
leave
it,
separate, please.
okay. 7C, the board will consider approving and authorizing the superintendent or designee to enter into the miscellaneous professional service contracts related to the following project. This goes to the Hamilton Middle School renovations. So why don't we keep this on for Monday? 7D, the board will consider authorizing the superintendent or designee to execute and to finalize and execute a purchase and sale agreement for the approximate 16-acre tract on Clay Road west of Fry, and negotiate and execute any necessary closing documents, contracts, easements, utility service, and development agreements. Any questions of Mr. Sprague or Ms. Sims or Ms. Hall? Any questions? No need to go into.
Just one question. Can I do that?
Yeah.
This is that pie shape that we looked at.
That's correct. We discussed with you guys the location and the configuration of that property previously.
Okay. All right.
Consensus, or you want to keep this on Monday? Monday. All right. 7E, the board will consider approving a request for a Texas Education Agency waiver that allows the district to train staff on various educational strategies designed to improve student performance in lieu of student instruction for 2019-2020, the school year. Any questions of Ms. Dr. Macias? Any questions? Okay, can we move this to consensus? All right. 7F, the board will consider approving the budget amendments for the period of October 1 through December 31st of 2018. Can we move this to consensus? Yes. Okay. 7G, the board will consider approving on second reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies, FMG local, student activities, travel. This is a revise. Okay. Can we move this to consensus?
Yes.
Okay. 7H, the board will consider approving the administration's recommendations for rezoning modifications of multiple campus attendance boundaries for 2019-2020. All right, Ms. Christie.
Evening. On January 14th, I presented an elementary and middle school boundary proposal that would provide relief for 4 schools with minimally impacting 9 total schools and affect approximately 804 students. Tonight, I'm going to go over information that was requested by the board, along with suggestions that we received from the community through the link on the CFISD website that was created on January 15th. After, I'm going to make the committee's final recommendation for you for the boundaries for the 1920 school year. Okay. At the last meeting, Mr. Ryan wanted us to look at possibly including Res Code 89, which is Kensington Crossing Apartments, and Res Code 354, which is Reserve at Wynwood Lake Apartments, in the post to Gleason rezoning. And Mr. Jackson wanted us to explore additional options to increase the population of Lee, and also wanted us to look at providing additional relief for Francone. Right. Looking at Mr. Ryan's suggestion first, currently we're proposing the area north of Philippine be rezoned to Gleason. If we add these 2 additional res codes that are south of Philippine, that would add approximately 74 additional students to Gleason. The Office of Planning and Services believes that we would not have a natural boundary line without also including res code 545, which is Park at Wynwood Lake Apartments, and Res Code 352, which is Oak Lake Point. You can't see, but like the boot-shaped red outline, the 2 res codes right below that are the 2 that Mr. Ryan wanted us to look at. And then to the right of that are the other 2 res codes. I'm going to show you a bigger map in just a minute, but I wanted to share that those are the other 2 that we feel would need to be added. Adding the total of all 4 of those res codes would increase the student population currently from 112 that we're proposing to 247 students, which could then result in overpopulating Gleason Elementary. We believe Philippine Street, a thoroughfare, provides the best natural boundary line for our proposal. I'm going to jump to slide 6 just so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. If you look, the word post, to the right of the word post, you see the beltway, and you can kind of see that boot-shaped. Below that and to the right are the other 4 areas right above the creek that would also be included, where the beltway and the creek would be the natural dividing line. And all 4 of those would add an additional 135 students to Gleason, which would put them over capacity. So at this time, we feel that it's minimally impacting the students for this time. Okay, let me go back. Also, I'll just leave it on this one. Also that night, Mr. Jackson wanted us to explore other options to increase the population of Lee Elementary School, even more than the approximate 76 students that we're proposing to move from Post, which is the Stonehaven Apartments. It's the area, when you see the word Lee to the right, it's still the Peach area south or west of 290. Planning Services looked at multiple options for all of these schools in the area. You have Haregrove, Lee, and Kirk across 290. All are under capacity with Lee in the middle. If you pull from Kirk to increase Lee, then Kirk's numbers go down. Even further, then if we pull from Lee to give to Haregrove, then Lee's numbers go down. Potential changes had a domino effect on multiple campuses and multiple feeder patterns. In addition, Mr. Jackson wanted us to explore additional relief for Francone. Currently, we are proposing a change that would relieve Francone of approximately 44 students. When we looked at other options, we ran into the same problem. The domino effect would impact multiple schools, and thus impacting multiple feeder patterns. We believe the past 2 years of flooding devastation in many of the residential areas within Lee and Francone Elementary attendance boundary zones is having a residual impact that will continue to be felt for years. After consulting with PASA, we feel monitoring student enrollment in comparison with campus utilization is the most pragmatic way to do this at this time. Next year, with opening middle school 19, all of these suggestions we visit again, and we will examine all elementary schools and feeder patterns. Okay. That concludes the board input. Are there any questions regarding that information that we shared regarding this? Okay. For the past 3 weeks, we have been collecting input from the communities who will be impacted by the proposed boundary changes. Y'all have received this information as well, and so has the entire boundary committee. At this time, I would like to share and summarize the overall comments and suggestions that we received for each school that were recommending a boundary change. I will also be sharing information in response to the community suggestion. Post to Gleason and post to Lee. The majority of the input that we received was in favor of the relief. However, the community does not feel that it is enough. Our proposal involves moving approximately 180 students, 15% of the population, out of the post attendance zone to either Post or Lee or Gleason. Today, Post has 1,140 students. If we use today's numbers, post enrollment would be 960 students. We feel our changes is a conservative recommendation, and we'd really like another year to be able to look at PASA's latest projections before we move any more students than absolutely necessary. Okay. All right. Many were in favor of adding the apartments west of Jones Road and sending them to Haregrove. I would like to show you this area on a map to go over why we did not propose this area. So you see Jones Road in the red. The peach area to the left of Jones Road are all apartments. There are approximately 171 elementary students in this area that are currently zoned to Post that then go to Campbell and then to Ridge. If we move these students to Haregrove across 290, Haregrove does have room, these students would then need to go to Truett Middle School. Keep in mind, we are already adding approximately 268 students to Truett from Dean. In our proposal. And Truett cannot take any more students in addition to the Dean proposal at this time. Furthermore, we would be taking 171 students from Campbell, and Campbell has a declining enrollment. Their population right now is 83% capacity. Pulling these 171 would make it around 70% capacity. This area is also, we're going to look at it closely when we were developing the boundary lines for middle school 19. We also had concerns regarding transportation times. We spoke with Transportation Department and they were able to share some data. There are 15 total post runs right now, based on the time the buses leave the school and then travel to their last bus stop to drop students. All of our 15 bus runs are averaging between 17 to 18 minutes that the students are on the bus. Transportation then took a closer look at the 3 longest bus runs and looked at the GPS data associated with those runs. The longest any post student is on the bus is 36 minutes. This route is the longest route, and funny enough, it is in Jersey Village neighborhood. This bus run has more stops with fewer students because we have a lot of families that transport their own students because they live so close to the school. We also received requests to leave Winfern Forest. I'm going to go back to the slide 3 so you can see a better picture of that. Okay, Winfern Forest is the largest res code in there. It starts at the very top, goes all the way left to right, and then goes all the way through the bottom and splits the left 2 and right apartment sides. Winfern Forest, if you remember, is east of the Beltway and north of Philippine. There is approximately 100 students in this res code. It is one of the 4 res codes that we are recommending rezoning to Gleason. When you look at a map, all areas directly to the east of Winfern Forest already attend Gleason. For the 14-15 school year, recommendations were made to move the students immediately to the east of Winfern Forest to Gleason to help with the overcrowding of both Reed and Fraser. Since 2006, Winfern Forest has attended Post. With Post increasing enrollment and needing relief, we feel this is the best option for the 19-20 school year, where we can better utilize Gleason while still offering substantial relief to post. One other bit of information I'd like to share regarding some input that we received just yesterday, a recommendation regarding the area of the Blaylock Road. Let me go back to the map. There we go. As you can see, Blaylock starts south of of Old Hempstead Highway. It continues on and changes into Fairbanks, North Houston. This area does not attend Post. They attend Bain. It's in the Bain attendance zone. Also, if you go further east on 290, on the north side, Hollister is in the Holbrook attendance zone, not Post. There was some question as to students around the Blaylock area and the Hollister area still attending Post, and I just wanted to clarify that on the map. I would also like to share some input from the principal. Central office and administrators visited with the principal, Tamika Williams. Ms. Williams was able to share that currently, from pre-K to fourth grade, that all classes were at or below 22-1. She also shared that in fifth grade, the largest class was 24-1, with 25, as you know, being the cap. In addition, there are 2 portable buildings at Post that currently house 4 fifth grade classes. Most importantly, I feel Ms. Williams shared that never once did she feel that she didn't have adequate resources to meet the needs of all of her students. So in summary, this number of students in our recommendation for rezoning from Post to Gleason and Post to Lee will provide sufficient relief for longer than what the 5-year projection numbers indicate. Currently, Post is under projection by approximately 70 students this year. You can essentially subtract 70 students from the student total each year for the next 5 years projections. Okay, you want me to go all the way to the end? PASA will be providing new projections for the 19-20 school year within the next month. We'll be able to compare and have a better picture for the future of post-elementary projections. PASO also recommends for us to continue to monitor the residual effects of Hurricane Harvey before making any additional recommendations for boundary changes to Post. I'm going to share with you in the next part of it, but I'll go ahead and do it now here. You have Post. So when you see the 19-20 school year, it's at 1062. If you were to take 70 away from that column and moving all the way to the right, 70 away, and even in 23-24, if you take 70 away from 1144, you're at 1074, still under capacity. We had several concerns regarding in 2 or 3 years, they're going to be back at overcapacity. And again, this is data from October 2017 snapshot to create this data. We are under projection, so those numbers are a little bit inflated. And so what we want to do is see what these numbers look like within the next month, and then go and compare from there. If we need to make additional changes, the following year when we're doing all the other changes, then we can do it at that time. All right, let's see. Okay. We received a lot of favorable input for these recommendations. This change received the most input out of all of our proposed boundary changes. A few suggestions were made that I would like to go over. Cypress Creek Lakes zoned to Rennell instead of going to Pope, and then an area in Bridgeland leaving Wells and going back to Pope. All right. It was suggested that since Cypress Creek Lakes backs up to Rennell's boundary line, that we rezone these students to Rennell to offer the relief to Warner. Rennell is at 992 today and is at a 91% capacity and is also rapidly growing with Town Lake residents. This is one of our fastest growing areas. Cypress Creek Lakes has 109 students that attend Warner. When I say 109, the very bottom part of the green Warner, you see the street that goes left to right, that is Tuckerton. The part south of Tuckerton has 109 students. Above Tuckerton, around kind of the other Cypress Creek Lake, has over 200. So if we're just looking at the area by south of Tuckerton, 109 students alone, it is our opinion that this would not be a good decision to put Rennell at capacity with the anticipated rapid growth of Town Lake. In addition, all Rennell students attend Anthony. That would require more changes for the middle school for Cypress Creek Lake students who currently attend Smith and Ranch. Anthony's at 100% capacity right now and is also feeling the effects in the rapid growth of Town Lake. So again, putting them at capacity with an additional 109 students is close, but again, It's Town Lake is really rapidly growing and impacting Rennell and Anthony. And finally, there are many requests to move First Bend subdivision in Bridgeland back to Pope Elementary. This area was rezoned to Wells, and we were drawing the lines for the new elementary school in Bridgeland. We had to populate Wells, and this was one of the areas that moved from Pope to Wells. Our objective this year was to relieve Warner Elementary. Although we received a handful of these requests, the option does not offer relief for Warner. Wells is rapidly growing, and an additional elementary school, as you all know, is in the future for Bridgeland subdivision. I also want to acknowledge that although we received positive input from many Black Horse families excited about moving to Pope, many people shared they didn't want to leave Warner. Boundary changes are difficult, and I want to give credit to the leadership and staff at Warner. When people don't want to leave your school, it speaks volumes about the staff. I also know that Elizabeth Bradley and her staff at Pope are very excited about the proposed changes and already have plans, if approved, to welcome those students. Next up, Francone and Wilburn. We received very little input on this proposed change. It involved the least amount of students, 44, 45 students, but still provide a little bit of relief for Francone. The input we did receive was favorable. Okay, and again, that's the Ferndale subdivision along Winfern Road, right past Perry. Dean Truitt, the input we received had to do with concerns about transportation times and the request to have West Branch rezoned to Truitt. In regards to transportation, at the last board meeting, y'all asked a question, and Ms. Coleman, the Assistant Director for Transportation, shared that in this instance for West Branch, the distance may be greater, but the time on the bus was significantly less due to traffic patterns. I also want to share that both sections of West Branch are in the proposed boundary changes from Dean to Truitt. I think there was some confusion on the input that they wanted to make sure that all of West Branch was going to go to Truitt, not just part of it. And all of it is in the proposal. So this concludes the community input portion of the presentation. Do you have any questions regarding the information I provided regarding the community's suggestions for the proposed boundary change?
Thank you. Any questions, board members?
Just the post-elementary, how many, and Roy, this is probably for you, how many of our portables do we have at Post right now?
There are 2.
There's only 2, okay. Because I know at some of the schools we go to, they've got 6 and 8.
Yeah, there are 2 portables, and right now there are 4 fifth grade classrooms in there.
Okay. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Would you give that, you gave a number with the proposed move to relieve Post. How many students would that leave in that school with what our original proposal was?
We're recommending approximately 180 students to leave Post, about 76 from that would go to Lee, and about 112 that would go to Gleason. With that, around 180 kids. So on Post for next year, subtracting 70, you're about 92?
And the school's capacity is what?
It's 1092.
It's 1092.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a substantial relief for Post.
Sir.
I get concerned when parents target students and say they don't want those apartment kids at their school. And I just want to remind them that the Cypress-Fairbanks SD, we have opportunity for all, and that gives all parents the opportunity to get at Post and help make that the school to continue to be the best school that it can be, instead of pointing fingers at apartment kids. I just wanted to say that. Thank you for what you've done.
And our proposal is 15% of the students right now. Relieving post.
Okay. Okay. Tom?
So one quick follow-up. Just as a reminder, when we talk about capacity, that's not the original design capacity of the school, but the revised capacity when a number of years ago the decision was made to actually reallocate and increase the capacity of the school above and beyond what the original design of it was without adding any additional square footage. Roy, do we have any idea how much original capacity was for these schools?
I don't have it with me, and we can certainly find that out from our facility records of what our capacity was. But if I remember right, it was probably in the 800s because it was a smaller school. And when we came in and did the additions and renovations over at Post, we did add additional classrooms to help increase the capacity at the campus.
Thank you. I know when I did a walkthrough of one of our smaller footprints, although it was supposed to be at capacity, it was clearly greatly in excess, and happily a number of years later we did build another school literally across the street. When I've done my walkthrough at this particular school, that type of crowding of students and the technology equipment, because that takes up more space, because that was not part of the original design structure. It doesn't remind me of what Joel looked like before we built the school across the street. But I am sensitive to the parents' concerns, and I do appreciate your taking a look. I remain sensitive with the population at Francone. I know that creates a wonderful opportunity there. But I remain concerned whenever our population reaches a certain size, particularly at some of our older campuses that had that smaller footprint. But thank you for taking a look at those.
Just one quick comment, and Christy touched on it, but I want to emphasize that this doesn't go away. We do this every year, and that's going to continue to occur, and especially as we open up middle school 19 in the 2021 school year, that's going to cause a bigger boundary change than the ones we're talking about this year. But that also will affect elementary feeder patterns. So, I just want parents to know that it's great to grow, and there's challenges when you grow, and one of those things are that you have to constantly look at boundary changes. And one of the things that we've marveled about is Jersey Village High School. Jersey Village High School is our largest high school. Now, you would think where the majority of growth would be out west of the district, but we're excited about the Jersey Village area and how it's regenerating itself, and that's going to be an area that we have to continue to look at along with the western parts of our district. So it's a constant process.
And I am, my wife taught at Post, and I feel very close tied to Post Elementary, and our church is close to there. But if you tell me, Roy, that the school has been expanded to increase the capacity, and the numbers that you all are suggesting is not overcrowding the capacity that we've expanded. Is that correctly? Is that what you're telling me?
That's correct.
Then what I'm saying is that if we've done the expansion years ago, and you're telling me that this number is not overcrowding and putting a burden on the educational possibilities at this school, then I don't think we should go back to what the original capacity was. If you're telling me that in your professional opinion, then we need to let's roll with it and do what we can to educate these kids. That's all I'm saying. Yes.
I live behind Fairfield. And when I was thinking about the boundaries the other day, I was thinking about the Fairfield subdivision. And when Fairfield, which we used to call Farfield because it was way out in the middle of nowhere, and they didn't even have a grocery store, I don't think. So, and I remember when it was a ranch, so that's how old I am. But I remember Fairfield first went to Cyfair High School. They had to come all the way into Cyfair High School. And then they had to change to Cy Woods. And then they changed to Cy Ranch. And now they're going to Bridgelands. And we talk about this new Dunham Point, and there might be a potential going there. And I've heard parents tell me in the grocery store, of course, that's where you run into people sometimes. It's like, why do we always have to keep changing? And I said, well, this is where the growth is. The growth is coming out this direction. But we're also seeing regrowth, just like you're talking about in Jersey Village. And you're seeing repopulation. My wife's family is in Spring Branch, and where they live, and they were all retirees forever, and now you see big wheels in the driveway. So you see revitalization as we turn. But I think one of the points I really want to make is we strive in this district to make sure all of our facilities and our schools are doing the same thing. And so it doesn't matter where you're going to school, you're getting the same academics, you're being offered the same extracurricular. So it just because of where your zip code may be doesn't mean you're going to be restricted on something. And I just want people to realize that. Thank you.
All right. We'll keep that on Monday. We'll next go to 7I, the Cypress-Fairbanks ISD Board of Trustees. And thank you, Ms. Giron. We'll consider adopting an order calling a bond election to be held within the district on May 4th, 2019, making provisions for the conduct and the giving of notice of the election and containing other provisions relating thereto. We're going to have to hold this to Monday.
As you know, we made a presentation on Monday, along with our long-range planning committee made a presentation. So we're just here to answer any further questions that trustees might have.
I'm wondering, would it better serve our community if we ask the questions on Monday? Do you want to get yours answered tonight, Tom?
Well, if we have to make a decision on Monday, I would like, if we have to make a decision on Monday, I'd kind of like to hear the answers at least to my questions now.
Because we want Julie to have to come back Monday. We don't want her to.
Yeah. She'll be here.
She's going to be here anyway. Okay, Tom, go ahead.
I guess the first two go to Dr. Henry. I listened to the State of the Union address, and I've also read comments coming out of our state's capital. It appears that competition against ISDs is going to be incentivized by both the national government as well as the state government. So my question, the first question for you, Mark, on this is, does this bond proposal keep us competitive, since we are now being required to be competitive focused?
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Yeah, I do think it helps keep us competitive. I mean, if you take a look at the proposal that the Long Range Planning Committee sent us, it over the next 5 or 6 years, it continues to revitalize and upgrade the technology that we have available to our students in the classrooms. Certainly, there's no greater leader, in my opinion, in school safety than Cyfair ISD. Does that mean we're perfect? No. Are we continually trying to improve? Yes, as realized in this bond election, because you can see, I believe it's in excess of $200 million dedicated to helping make our facilities safer. One of the things that doesn't get talked a whole lot about, but I think the focus that this district has on fine arts, on athletics, on career and technology education, on special programs. I think all of those help make Cyfair the best choice for parents. Now, not all parents choose us, but I think when it comes to, as Dr. O said, opportunity for all, I think Cyfair has something for everyone. And then I think, again, if you look in the bond program and you see that this district's commitment to transportation, no other districts our size have universal bus transportation. Pretty much anywhere you live, we will pick you up from your house, drop you off, and then take you home in the evening. And not only that, we have late bus runs for those that are involved in activities and tutorials. So, yes, sir, I believe this bond program is designed to touch the lives of every child in this district from pre-K to graduation.
Thank you. A very good and thorough answer. I appreciate that. Our district has had a business model of routinely renovating older campuses to try and bring them up to current. Certainly, we're reviewing a contract to do that very thing for Hamilton Middle School. A significant portion of this bond proposal addresses this. When I served on TASB prior to Bob's service, but also the year I spent serving with 36 trustees around the state, it was my anecdotal and conversational observation that we were the only, or perhaps one of the few, large districts that captured this business approach. And so I really have two questions for you. Does this approach justify itself in student attainment and teacher retention? And then the second question, and this is almost devil's advocacy, because of the size of this bond issue, should we consider abandoning this business model and do what everybody else does?
Mr. Jackson, trustees, I think a well-lighted, comfortable, modern, new facility helps us attract the best teachers in the state. I think that's the folks we have now. I have no doubt that we have the best campus leaders in Cyfair ISD. And how does that benefit students? Well, it benefits students because we have some of the best campus instructors and campus leaders of anyone in the country. So, and that does matter. A comfortable learning environment, it matters certainly to our professional staff, but it matters to students too. I think when our students see how much this community cares for them by the facilities they provide, and you can go to the newest, most modern buildings that we have on the west side of town, and then some of our older facilities, you would say older, but they look brand new, like Bain and Holbrook, which I have visited recently, and they look like brand new schools. You see that this community believes that students from all zip codes deserve an opportunity to learn. So I certainly think that that's important. Going to the second part of your question, the biggest part of what the Long Range Planning Committee brought us was to improve and enhance existing facilities. In fact, this will impress y'all, I did a little math, and it's 55% of the total proposition is about improving and enhancing facilities that we already have. So just like your home, just like your car, maintaining our assets is one of the reasons that we're so efficient, and we're viewed by many of our most conservative state leaders as very prudent and efficient. So I think we one thing I always like to say, and you can go back to the 2014 bond, we not only said we would do what we said we would do, but we did it at less cost to the taxpayers, and we've been able to provide some additional upgrades. So I do think that continuing to improve and enhance, renovate your facilities is important. And I can't remember, but do y'all remember the old oil filter commercial that said you can pay me now or you can pay me later? It's a whole lot cheaper to put a new oil filter in than have to replace an engine. And there are many districts that wait too long, and instead of putting an oil filter in, they have to replace the whole engine. And then you not only have not provided your staff and students the type of facilities and programs that you want, when you do finally upgrade, it's much more expensive. So I think it's cost effective, efficient, and beneficial to our community to continue to upgrade our facilities.
Thank you. I know that certainly for one district that has a different business model, over 1/3 of their students do not attend the neighborhood school. And certainly we've adopted the neighborhood school as part of our business strategy. And I at least believe that keeping all of our schools up to date as best as we can helps keep the neighborhood school concept as part of that of which we do. So thank you. Another good, thorough answer.
And Mr. Jackson, you say, well, that just benefits students and teachers and principals, but that's not true. It protects property values. We have a lower crime rate. We have more businesses that want to move here. We have a stronger faith-based community. The public school system in every community, and especially in the Cyfair community, is the center of economic development, faith-based development, hospital development, business development, whatever you want to consider. So if Cyfair ISD is not strong, this community is not going to be strong, and everybody from the youngest to the oldest is going to suffer.
I think you're right. I tend to agree with you. Let me shift gears. Miss Julie Heineman, I have a question for you. And as you walk up, I'll ask the question. As I said Monday night, our job as trustees is we don't vote for or against the bonds. We vote for or against sending the proposal out to the voters to approve. I hesitate as a trustee to approve sending a bond proposal out to the voters unless there's a reasonable possibility that the voters would in fact approve it. So my question for you, which is a little unfair, but you are chair of this committee, why do you think the voters will in fact approve this bond proposal?
Well, I believe that the voters will approve this bond proposal because it's what's best to serve our community. The committee that put this proposal together and brought this to you is representative of our Cypress-Fairbanks community. The 50 community members that participated actively represent a very diverse group of people from all different aspects of our community. And they all believe that the voters will approve this bond proposal. And the process that we use to create this proposal has validity and is fiscally sound. And I've been hearing from the community, people have been coming up to me that since we did the presentation on Monday, and I'm hearing a lot of very positive feedback that they understand the need for this investment. Just as Dr. Henry said, a significant part of this bond proposal does look at asset protection. We know historically that the community has supported bond proposals for CFISD, and we don't want to take that for granted, certainly, but we believe that support is well earned. But we also know that we need to preserve and protect the assets that have already been created for the community, and so we want to make sure we educate the community about that as well. So we feel very comfortable and confident that this bond proposal will be accepted and passed and supported by the Cypress-Fairbanks community.
Thank you for a very good answer, and also thank you for chairing and your service, but also stepping to the podium. Stepping to the podium while the camera's on is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Roy, let me go around to your side. A couple of quick questions for you. talk a little bit more about the security as it relates to the portables. And you can be as guarded as you think necessary. I remember after 9/11, and I served at that time as well, a state law was passed whereby we could go into closed session to talk about security measures. It's a little bit different now, but I still want to respect that you never tell everything that you happen to know as it relates to security. But please comment about what we're thinking about in this bond proposal for our portables.
What's included in the bond proposal before you for consideration is the addition of fencing around our portable buildings. And we're going to look at that strategically, work with our campus administrators on where we should locate that fencing to basically create another security barrier to our buildings. But I do want to add also, we already have numerous security features already built into our portables. One of the things we just we're completing now, we're almost done, is we made the decision this summer to come in and add lockdown buttons at all of our portable buildings to provide another layer and extra security measure for our students and our staff to make them feel more safe. Even prior to that, we have peepholes in our doors. We use metal doors on the exterior of the building. And then we also have placed cameras in strategic locations around that to be able to observe if there's any kind of activity going on outside the building. From that end of it. These buildings are also tied to our fire alarm and PA systems, and they're also tied to our burglar alarm system, our security intrusion system as well. So we've done pretty much a lot of things to make sure we protect those buildings and the occupants of those buildings as a result of them having to be needed in our district.
Part of the bond proposal talks about having phones within classrooms. Would these portables be candidates for that?
Yes, sir. That is also one of the items on the list of items to be considered as classroom phones.
I know 20, 30 years ago, the portables used to have phones. Do some of them still have phones, or have those been phased out as technology changes?
Basically what we have is like we have in our current classrooms is a two-way communication, but it's an open two-way communication. And part of the recommendation from a security standpoint is that if there was an issue, you may not want everybody in that room to understand what we're dealing with or that teacher's dealing with. So the thought process is by having a classroom phone installed, they could have a private conversation with the police department or whatever may be going on to kind of keep the tension down and keep everybody calm in a situation.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I do have a bit of a global question on Harvey, but I think I'll keep that one until Monday. And then my last question I have is for Dr. Macias and for you, Mary. But we're talking about a separate fine arts building. And as a parent, I have to say I'm very excited about this, but I also have to put on my trustee hat. Anecdotally, when my youngest was in elementary, she made the select all-elementary choir. They performed at Rice University in front of the Olympic Committee, but they literally had no place to practice within the district. Bob could have been a professional singer, and he'll tell you acoustics matter. And if you don't have them, the sound you get will be nothing like the sound you'll have when you actually go into performance. So having appropriate practice facilities matter. But we also know every elementary has a cafeteria, every middle school has a cafeteria with a bit of a stage. Certainly, I spent 6 years as a band dad in middle school listening to concerts in cafeterias. But all of our high schools have stages as well. And then of course, we have the Berry Center with a stage and an auditorium for that stage as well. And so my question is, make the case for me as a trustee, not as a parent, but make the case for me as a trustee as to why we have need of a separate fine arts facility. I visited with Roy, and he advised me take a look at Austin ISD because that was the pattern in the footprint. And so I've Googled it and actually know some of the trustees down there and chatted with them. So I've heard from their viewpoint. But if you would, convince me as a trustee why we want this.
So, Mr. Jackson, first let me share that we have over 87,000 students that are enrolled in our fine arts programs, K through 12 in our district. That's about 75% of our student population, which we're very pleased. That's not by accident. We know that when our students are involved in the fine arts as well as other areas, that they have a much greater chance of performing well academically, of staying in school, of graduating. As I shared with you at our last meeting, we see that in Cypress-ISD. Our directors, Mary and her team, but also all of our music directors, are always out at our elementary schools, our middle schools, creating that awareness about the fine arts, so that as they progress through the grades, they continue that involvement. So it's very purposeful, but it's all to make sure that our students are being successful. So just that high number of our students that participate will tell you the need that we have and the reason why we've outgrown some of these different facilities that you've talked about. So Mary, can you share a little more?
So we do have stages in our cafeterias at the elementary schools and the middle schools, but the capacity of those cafeterias are not very big. And so the capacity of our elementary cafeterias for a program are between 304 and 342 people, and most of those elementary programs have a whole lot more parents and grandparents and community members attending than that. And so if you've been to an elementary program lately, you know that it's stacked several deep around the outside because there's no place to sit, but everyone wants to see the children perform. When we go to our middle school cafeterias, the capacity of those are right over 500 for a seated concert. And some of our middle school programs have 300 kids in the program, and so what they have to do is stagger and send parents home. My colleague shared that at his school, the principal would get up and say, okay, the sixth graders have performed. Now I need all of those parents to go home because I need to be able to get my 7th and 8th grade parents in the door. And so when we have performances, it's very important for the kids to get to hear the older kids perform too. And in our cafeterias at the middle school with 500, you can't do that. You have to stagger and ask people to leave. And what we really hope to have is an audience where everyone gets to hear all of the students perform. We know that our high school auditoriums, not just the fine arts events, but also many other events are scheduled into those auditoriums. And we had almost 3,000 district events scheduled into our high school auditoriums last year, and we pulled the data from the facilities department on that. And so that means on average, each of our 12 high school auditoriums had 245 events scheduled in those spaces. And we only have 173 class days, and so that means that those auditoriums are booked solid on the weekends and in the summer, because we also use those for summer programs. We host approximately 32 days of UIL music and theater competitions. We often have to have those competitions in our schools on school days, and when we have those, then we are displacing multiple classes in order to have the spaces, the warm-up spaces, the sight reading spaces, places to hold the children as we're competing. And so having a separate facility would allow us to be able to move a lot of those competitions to this facility and not be displacing classes at the high school campuses for a lot of March and April because of all the different competitions that are happening. We're hoping with this type of facility that we will now be able to volunteer to host the regional and area theater competitions, which right now we're not able to do.
And which also saves us on transportation costs.
Right. You mentioned the Berry Center Theater. It seats right over 480 students, which is smaller than our middle school cafeterias. So really moving a middle school concert to the Berry Center really has not worked into that theater. They've had to move some of the large events into the arena, which is not acoustically treated to have a formal concert, but that it has the seating capacity, but it's not really the acoustics that we would like to have for formal concerts.
So the question occurs to me, if we have capacity issues, instead of having one 1,500-foot facility on that footprint, why not have two 750-seat events centers over there?
We've outgrown the 800 seats that we have in our high school auditorium, so we really do need a larger venue that will seat more than 800 or 750. And there are several large music events at the high schools where they have combined and done major works with band, choir, and orchestra, and those events have had to happen in the arena because the seating on those are way over 800. And so we have some campuses that are moving their performances out of their high school auditoriums because those spaces are not big enough.
And Roy, a follow-up question on this. What Ms. Running's talking about reminds me that what's behind the floodlights is often as important, if not more important, than what's in front of it. Is it your vision that what is at the stage level going back is going to be designed to accommodate some of these different potential opportunities, as well as being able to move a number of classes through along with instruments? So am I hearing that it's more than just 1,500 seats in front of a movie theater stage?
Absolutely, and we would work very closely with our Fine Arts Department from a programming standpoint. They've looked at various facilities around the state, and they like the idea of the Austin ISD Performing Arts Center, so that's what we used as kind of a model from a budgeting standpoint, but certainly we'll work with the various teams to get the input. We'd be looking at a full fly system versus a half fly system that we typically have at our auditorium, which will give those departments that much more flexibility. We would increase our storage space. We would provide those painting rooms and things like that that are needed for all the props to support those programs. So yes, we would be enhancing the back of house area to also in addition to the seating capacity of the facility.
And what I'm hearing is y'all will be designing something so that we can in fact accommodate both display as well as exhibit areas for fine arts.
That's correct. And one of the goals of the project would be to have a lot of display for our art projects that our students have. As you can see, in this building, we try to display some of those art projects around here, but we're limited with space. We would have the ability of having that visual arts capacity built into this facility in addition to the Performing Arts Center components.
One other question. When I went back prior to Monday, I had looked at everything that was posted online. It appeared as if the proposed parking for the Fine Arts Center takes the spot of either existing or planned detention. Did I see that right?
No, what we've shown in just the sketch and stuff that we actually shared with the committee is we are planning for detention. Right now we're showing that detention area would be along the feeder road of 290, and then the Performing Arts Center as well as the new Instructional Support Center would be behind that detention area. Obviously, once we start the planning of the project and assuming the election passes and you call the election, we would be working closely with Harris County Flood Control. We're going to be looking at not only that site, but the Cy-Fair High School Educational Complex site that we have to try to improve the drainage over there as well and seeing where the detention area might be best located. But from a conceptual standpoint, we were trying to sketch it out to what we think the detention capacity would be and how we could fit it on that site.
Thank you.
Tom, I want to emphasize this point, and I stepped out a minute, so I might have missed it, but I want to make sure that you and the other board members in the community understands we're talking about a performing and visual arts center. So it's not limited just to the performing arts. It's also will be designed in such a way that we can display the great artwork that our students produce in this district.
Very good, thank you.
I guess one question, this may be for Stuart, Dr. Henry. And this came up last time we did the 2014 bond. What assurance can we give our citizens that the debt that we incur with this this bond should not be anything that we should be concerned with as a community?
Well, what I can say about that is that, and we talked about how we were able to manage the tax rate over the last 5 years, going on 6 years, related to the 2014 bond, which included all of the remaining unissued money from the 2004 and 2007 bonds. That with this particular bond proposal and the debt that we incur, we would implement the same strategies in managing that tax rate that we have as we've sold well over $1.3 billion worth of bonds, and that would be utilizing refunding opportunities when they come across, and we do those almost on an annual basis, where we refund, refinance previously issued bonds to achieve debt service savings. We issue variable rate bonds to take advantage of the short end of the yield curve. We utilize capitalized interest to pay down bonds, and whenever we can, whatever we can do to be able to minimize the impact of that tax rate, we continue to do that. And so all I'm saying is I don't know, of course, all of the information that we provided regarding the tax impact is based on model assumptions. And of course, we don't have a crystal ball, although when I presented that to the committee, I did show them that I did have a crystal ball, but it was more of a joke. Nobody laughed, but but yeah, accountants are so funny. Thank you, Marty. But certainly, we can't predict the future, and we can't predict what the market is going to be, and we can't make any assurances. But what I can assure you of is that we would implement the same strategy in selling these bonds and managing the tax rate that we have in the past.
Right. If I can add to that too, and it was before I ever arrived in the district, and of course you had a bond election in 2007, and then we had the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, 2010, and the way that bond was handled during that Great Recession, I think, speaks very wisely about Stewart and this board, because there were a lot of projects that didn't proceed forward at that time because the economy would not support those projects. And then when the economy recovered, then that 2007 bond election. So in good times and bad, I think the district has managed bond dollars well.
All right. Thank you. Anything else, Bob?
No, I'm fine. Y'all ask all of them. Thank you.
All right. The superintendent's briefing will be on Monday night, and I'm going to get out of here. Tonight's my wife's birthday, and I was here at the meeting, so I'm getting ready to get out of here. Love you, baby. We'll see you Monday. Thank you. We're adjourned.